Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my dissertation. It is titled Telling the War, Memory, Meaning, and Identity in the Oral Histories of Vietnam Veterans. My research, it examines how Vietnam veterans have reconstructed the meaning of their wartime experiences over the past 5 decades through oral history interviews. Rather than treating veterans' memory as fixed historical evidence, I explore how these memories evolve in response to changing personal experiences, cultural attitudes, and public commemorations. By comparing oral histories collected across multiple decades, I hope to better understand how memory and identity develop throughout veterans' lives. Several important historians have shaped my research. The first is Christian G. Appy, particularly his book Working Class War. Appy argues that the Vietnam War it disproportionately affected working class Americans and demonstrates how social class shaped military service and veterans' experiences. His work it provides an essential foundation for understanding who served in Vietnam and why their post-war experiences often differed from those of the broader American public. My dissertation it builds on Appy's work by examining how those veterans themselves have interpreted those experiences over time rather than focusing solely on the social structures that influence them. Second major scholar, Patrick Hagepin, he's the author of The Vietnam War and American Memory. He examines how public memory of Vietnam developed through memorialization, politics, museums, and national debates. His work it demonstrates that collective memory is constantly reconstructed rather than permanently fixed. My research expands this interpretation by shifting attention from public memory to personal memory. Instead of analyzing how Americans remember Vietnam as a nation, I investigate how individual veterans reconstruct their own narratives throughout different stages of their life. Third important scholar for me, Jerry Limbeck, whose book The Spitting Image challenges one of the most persistent myths surrounding Vietnam veterans. He argues that many stories describing hostile treatment of returning veterans developed later through cultural memory rather than contemporary evidence. His work it reminds historians to critically examine memory itself rather than accepting every recollection at face value. My dissertation adopts that same critical perspective while asking why veterans' memories change over time and what those changes reveal about identity rather than simply determining whether every memory is historically accurate. Fourth, influential historian Michael Frisch, his landmark work, A Shared Authority, it transformed the practice of oral history. He argues that interviews are collaborative creatures between the interviewer and the narrator, and that historians must understand oral testimony as an interpretive process rather than a simple collection of facts. His methodological framework it provides the foundation for my research, which treats oral histories not simply as evidence of past events, but as evidence of how veterans continually construct meaning from those events. Finally, Jay Winter, who profoundly influenced my approach through his scholarship on war, memory, and commemoration. Although Winter primarily studies the First World War, his theoretical work demonstrates how societies and individuals continuously reinterpret war through remembrance, mourning, and cultural change. His broader memory framework provides an important model for examining Vietnam veterans across multiple decades. While these scholars they have significantly advanced the historiography, an important gap remains. Most studies they examine Vietnam veterans during a relatively limited period or focus on a single aspect of memory, trauma, public commemoration, or identity. Few historians systematically compare veterans' oral narratives across several decades to examine how those narratives evolve throughout the life. My dissertation seeks to fill that gap. I'm going to conduct a longitudinal analysis of Vietnam veterans' oral histories collected from the 1970s through the present, with some emphasis looking at how those narratives may be changed after the Gulf War. By integrating oral history methodology, memory studies, trauma scholarship, and veteran identity into a single analytical framework, I hope to demonstrate not only that veterans' memories change, but also how and why those changes occur over time. Ultimately, I believe my research it contributes a new perspective to the field, placing oral testimony at the center of historical interpretation rather than treating interviews as static primary sources. My dissertation argues that the process of remembering itself is historically significant. In doing so, it offers professional historians a more comprehensive framework for understanding the relationship between memory, identity, and lived experience in the aftermath of the war.